Kaylin, please, I am begging you, we can fix this. Just put the phone away.
She was on her knees, right there, in the middle of the office hallway. Mascara down her face, one heel twisted sideways, hands reaching toward him. He didn't move.
There's nothing on that phone that means what you think it means.
He raised it anyway. Her own voice filled the hallway.
After the divorce, I'll claim the pregnancy is Kaylin's. He won't contest it. He never contests anything. With $100 million in assets, the settlement alone will cover everything.
Nobody breathed. Not the co-workers frozen in the doorway. Not the man in the expensive suit standing 2 steps behind her, who suddenly couldn't find anywhere to look. Not her. Kaylin lowered the phone. Slowly. No rush.
You are 3 months pregnant,
Kaylin said, as if Jabari hadn't spoken.
with his child. And I've known for 6 weeks.
She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. He glanced down at his watch. That same plain, practical watch he'd worn to work every single day for 6 years, and said, almost quietly enough to miss,
You have 47 seconds before security arrives.
No, Kaylin! Please!
That was the moment everything collapsed. But to understand why Kaylin Voss was standing in that hallway, calm, dry-eyed, completely prepared, you have to go back to the morning it all began. That morning started the way every morning had for the past 8 years. Quietly, without fanfare, with a man doing everything right for someone who had already decided he didn't matter. His name was Kaylin Voss, 34 years old, senior engineer at one of Manhattan's most demanding tech firms. The kind of man who woke up before the alarm, made his wife's coffee before his own, and never once asked to be thanked for it. He believed, genuinely, deeply, that loyalty shown consistently over time was the most powerful thing a person could offer another human being. By the end of that Tuesday, he would understand exactly how that belief had been used against him. The city of New York does not pause for exhaustion. By 5:45 in the morning, Lexington Avenue was already in motion. Cab doors slamming. A food cart wheeled into position on the corner of East 78th. Pigeons conducting their usual hostile negotiations on the sidewalk. The sky above Midtown was still that bruised purple shade it gets before the sun commits. Kaylin had been awake for 22 hours straight. His 2016 Toyota Camry, silver with a dent above the rear left wheel he kept meaning to fix, rolled into the lot of a BP station near East 78th Street. The engine made a soft, grateful ticking sound when he cut it off. He sat for a moment before getting out. Just sat. His dress shirt had a coffee stain below the second button. His eyes carried 14 hours of fluorescent conference rooms. And yet, even in that condition, there was something composed about Kaylin Voss. Something unhurried. The quality of a man who had long since made peace with the idea that good things require time. Psychologists call this type of person a high investment partner. Someone who gives generously, quietly, and without limit, often without recognizing how badly the imbalance has tilted. Their loyalty makes it genuinely hard to believe that someone they love could be operating in bad faith. Kaylin Voss was a textbook high investment partner. He just didn't know it yet. Behind the counter stood Omari Reyes, 68 years old, dark-skinned, silver-haired, with a face that had arrived, through the long work of living, at something close to peace. He had been selling lottery tickets at this station for 11 years. He knew Kaylin the way old neighborhood men know the regulars. Not just their names, but the texture of their silences. He took one look at Kaylin walking through the door and laughed. Not mean, just honest. "Son," Omari said, "you look like something the city chewed up and forgot to finish." 14-hour overnight, big system rollout, 3 teams pointing at each other every time something broke. Omari clucked his tongue. "And you drove yourself home?" "Imani doesn't like waking up alone." Omari went quiet. Just one beat. The pause of a man who has formed a private opinion and decided, for now, to keep it there. He reached under the counter and slid a lottery ticket across the glass. "Take this one. Maybe fate will finally pity you today." Kaylin laid $2 on the counter and tucked the ticket into his shirt pocket. "Thank you, Omari." "Don't thank me yet." He drove the rest of the way home through the quiet Upper East Side streets, where he and Imani rented a 2-bedroom on East 91st. A building with a doorman who remembered everyone's dry cleaning and floors that smelled of lemon polish. The apartment was dim and still. Imani was sleeping. He made her coffee first, then his own. Scrambled 2 eggs, sliced half an avocado, set the tray outside the bedroom door with a folded napkin, a small ritual he had maintained for years, through overtime weeks, through disagreements, through the low-grade exhaustion of a marriage that had gradually stopped feeling like a partnership. He did it anyway, because that was who he was. He was asleep on the sofa inside of 4 minutes. At 1:47 in the afternoon, Kaylin sat alone near Riverside Park, eating a chicken sandwich from a cart on Broadway. The Hudson shimmered in the distance. He pulled out his phone, remembered the ticket, scanned it. The screen held still for 1 second. Then it lit up. Jackpot. $100 million. He did not shout, did not move. He sat completely still, sandwich forgotten in his lap, river still moving, city still breathing, world entirely indifferent to what had just happened to one quiet man on a Tuesday afternoon. Then, very softly, he whispered, "Finally, I can truly make her happy. Not, I'm rich. Not, I'm free." His very first thought was her. That is not a romantic impulse. That is a wound that has learned to call itself love. And it was that wound, that instinct to give before thinking of himself, that sent Kaylin Voss driving straight toward Vertex Dynamics that afternoon, with roses and a Birkin bag, and a heart full of the wrong kind of hope. He drove back to Omari's station first. The old man studied his face the moment he walked in, leaned forward across the glass counter, and dropped his voice low and serious. "Son, lock your car doors. Big money always brings demons with it." Kaylin nodded slowly. He just didn't know the demon had already been in his life for 11 months. And in a few hours, he would be standing in a hallway on the 27th floor, calm, dry-eyed, and completely prepared, watching her beg for a second chance she had spent nearly a year making sure he would never give. But that comes later. First, the morning, the ticket, and the man who spent his first $1 million thought on someone who was already planning to take everything. What Kaylin chose to do with that money in the next 2 hours will either restore your faith in love or remind you, painfully, of why that faith needs to be protected. Stay with me. There are men who win $100 million and immediately think about themselves. And then there are men like Kaylin Voss. His first call was to an Hermes boutique on Madison Avenue near East 62nd Street, a store he had walked past dozens of times over the years. On their 3rd anniversary, a warm October afternoon, he had watched Imani press her palm flat against the glass, staring at a limited edition Birkin bag the color of deep cognac, with brushed gold hardware. She hadn't said a word, just looked, then turned away. Kalen never mentioned that he remembered. He simply remembered. He walked into that boutique in yesterday's wrinkled shirt and walked out 40 minutes later with a bag that cost more than his first 2 years of rent. No hesitation. He was operating on the logic of a man who believed love is best expressed through consistent, generous action. Then came 300 deep red roses, ordered from a florist on Lexington Avenue. Delivered directly to the Vertex Dynamics building, a 40-story glass tower on West 48th Street where Imani worked as Director of Strategic Partnerships. And a glossy black Rolls-Royce Cullinan, rented from a service in Chelsea. The kind of vehicle that stops foot traffic simply by existing. Before leaving for Midtown, he made one more stop. A grocery store on Amsterdam Avenue. A pint of Haagen-Dazs dark chocolate ice cream, Imani's specific preference, and a small bundle of white freesia for the blue ceramic vase on her office desk. He had replenished that vase roughly 40 times over the course of their marriage. Quietly, without being asked, without expecting thanks. Those gestures looked like love from the outside. And in Kalen's case, they were. But they were also something else. The invisible labor of a person who had learned to make themselves indispensable, hoping indispensability would eventually feel like being truly valued. It almost never works that way. He was carrying the grocery bag back to the car when his hand found Imani's backup phone in his jacket pocket. She'd left it at home, a small habit she'd developed over recent months, cycling between two devices with explanations that were each just plausible enough on their own and slightly wrong when considered together. The screen had a text notification visible without unlocking. "Tonight he'll be home late. I'll come over. Jay." He read it twice. Something cold moved through his chest. Not rage, something quieter and more devastating. The specific feeling of a thing you have almost known for a long time finally stepping forward and introducing itself clearly. He stood on Amsterdam Avenue for 17 seconds. He counted them later. Then he put the phone in his pocket and kept walking. Why didn't he call her? Why didn't he turn around? Because Kalen didn't act on suspicion. He acted on evidence. And the truth was, this had not been the first sign. For 11 months, 11 quiet, costly months, he had been watching. Late nights, a new perfume worn only to work, a phone always placed face down on the kitchen counter. Individually explainable, together a different story. He had begun keeping records 3 months in, not out of paranoia, out of the discipline of a man who needed to know, truly know, before deciding what to do next. Psychologists call this emotional regulation, managing your internal state before taking action. It is hardest exactly when the stakes are highest. Kalen had spent years developing it. He needed to see. So he drove to Midtown. The Rolls-Royce pulled in front of Vertex Dynamics at 3:14 in the afternoon. The roses were already arranged in the lobby, a wall of deep red that stopped everyone who walked through the doors. Employees gathered at windows. Someone was filming from the mezzanine. Kalen stepped out of the car. Clean shirt, he'd changed in the back seat. Hermes bag in one hand. And on his face, the rarest thing in his emotional vocabulary, a genuine, unguarded smile. A memory surfaced as he crossed the lobby. 3 years earlier, February, Imani had come down with a brutal flu. Kalen took 2 unpaid weeks off work, right in the middle of a product launch that nearly cost him his position. He cooked her porridge, pressed cool cloths against her forehead at 2 in the morning, sat in the dark bedroom telling terrible jokes until she laughed despite herself. When his department head asked why he hadn't simply hired a nurse, Kalen looked at him with mild confusion. "She's my family," he said. He meant it completely. He took the elevator to the 27th floor. Long hallway, dark charcoal carpet, floor-to-ceiling windows at the far end framing a gray-blue slice of New York sky. He heard her voice before he reached the corner. Relaxed, playful, the voice of someone who believed the coast was completely clear. "Jabari, stop worrying. Kalen still thinks everything is fine. He's reliable like that, always working late, never asks the wrong questions." A man's low laugh answered, then sounds no one should hear through a door they are about to open. Kalen pushed it open. Imani was in the arms of Jabari Cross, her 41-year-old department head. Tall, expensive suit, the casual familiarity of a man who had been there many times before. The Hermes bag hit the floor, then the grocery bag. The ice cream rolled slowly and came to rest against the baseboard. Imani spun around. Her first expression, the one her face produced before she had time to manage it, was not guilt. It was fear. But then, in 3 seconds, her eyes traveled past Kalen's shoulder, through the hallway window, down to the street where the black Rolls-Royce still gleamed at the curb. And for one brief, unguarded moment, her expression shifted into something else entirely. Kalen saw it. He saw all of it. What he pulled from his jacket pocket next is something none of them in that hallway will ever forget. And when his phone rang in the middle of that silence, everything changed at once. Nobody in that hallway moved. Not Imani, not Jabari, not the 2 junior associates frozen in the conference room doorway, holding their laptops like shields. The only sound was the muffled city far below. Then Kalen's phone rang. He answered on the second ring, voice completely steady. "Yes, this is Kalen Voss." A pause. "I confirm. Thank you." He slid the phone back into his pocket. "That was the lottery commission," he said. "The transfer is confirmed." What happened next is a near-perfect demonstration of what psychologists call self-interest activation. The moment a person's mask drops, not because of an emotional confrontation, but because a financial calculation has just changed. Jabari's expression moved through several stages: smug, confused, recalibrating. Imani, perfectly still since the door opened, took one step forward. Just one. Toward Kalen. Involuntary. Her body moved toward the money before her mind could manage the impulse. Kalen noticed. He noticed everything. He reached up and removed his wedding ring. Plain gold band. Simple, unpretentious. They had chosen it together on 5th Avenue 8 years earlier, and Imani had teased him for picking the plainest one in the case. No flourish whatsoever. He had said he didn't need flourish. He just needed it to last. He placed the ring inside the Hermes bag, still on the floor where it had fallen, picked it up, walked across the hall, and held it out. Not to Imani, to Jabari. "Since you've already been enjoying my wife's company," Kalen said quietly, "it seems fair you take on the associated costs." Jabari didn't take it. He stood very still, the way men do when they realize they've badly miscalculated someone. Kalen set the bag on the floor between them and straightened up. "I've suspected this for 11 months. From his inner jacket pocket, he removed a folded envelope. He opened it and held up the first page. Printed screenshots of text messages, Dozens, time-stamped, some with location data. Hotel receipts from the Knickerbocker on Times Square, charged to a joint account Imani believed Kaylin never checked. Calendar entries, late client dinner on Tuesday evenings, lining up precisely with a West Village restaurant that Jabari's assistant had expensed repeatedly. He laid each page against the hallway wall, methodically, the way an engineer presents a diagnostic report. One of the junior associates quietly pulled the conference room door closed. Kaylin heard the soft click and didn't look up. He was not performing this for the audience. He was doing what he had always done, working through a problem carefully, completely, without wasted motion. There is a concept called the preparation effect, the measurable emotional benefit of thorough preparation before a confrontation. People who have prepared extensively experience significantly less acute distress in the moment because their nervous system has already processed much of the worst of it in advance. Kaylin had been grieving this marriage for nearly a year, quietly, alone, while still making her coffee every morning. "Kaylin," Imani started. "I'm not finished," he said, not harshly, just clearly. He placed the final page against the wall. Then, to the visible discomfort of everyone present, he said simply, "Give me a moment." He walked back down the hallway, took the elevator to the lobby, stepped through the revolving doors, and got into the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. The driver, Gerald, a retired Navy man who understood without being told, raised the partition. The silence in that back seat was total. Kaylin pressed his head against the leather headrest, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 11 months of careful, controlled composure, he let himself feel the full weight of what was sitting on his chest. He struck the armrest once, not hard, the way you press on a bruise to confirm it's still there. His breath became uneven, and he whispered, in the dark of that back seat, 8 years. And in your eyes, I was never anything but convenient. I want to be honest about this moment, because it's the most important one in the entire story. Kaylin Voss is not made of stone. The composure he showed in that hallway was not the absence of pain. It was pain, held inside extraordinary self-discipline. The moment he was alone, no audience, nothing to be composed for, it came through. 4 minutes and 20 seconds. He counted them later. Then he dried his face, straightened his collar, and got out. The difference in him when he walked back through those revolving doors was not dramatic, but it was visible to everyone who saw it. He had gone into that car looking like a man absorbing a wound. He came back out looking like a man who had absorbed it, set it down, and decided what came next. The receptionist at the front desk, Priya, 6 months on the job, glanced at his face and looked away quickly. Not because he was frightening, because something in his expression made people instinctively give him room. He rode the elevator back to 27. The hallway was more crowded. Word moves through an office building the way it moves through a small town, instantly and with detail. At least a dozen people stood at a careful distance, some pretending to check phones, some not pretending at all. Imani was still there. Mascara tracked down both cheeks, unwiped. Jabari stood slightly behind her, jacket oddly skewed, looking for the first time like a man who genuinely did not know what to do with himself. Kaylin gathered his documents, folded them, returned them to the envelope. Then he looked at both of them. One clear, unhurried look. "The divorce papers were filed this morning," he said. "I prepared them 3 months ago." Imani's breath caught. 3 months? You knew and said nothing? "I gathered evidence for 11 months, Kaylin said. I filed after month 8. I allowed 3 more months to confirm what I was seeing. He paused. I confirmed it. That answer, precise, patient, and entirely without heat, landed in that hallway like a stone into still water. Because everyone present suddenly understood the same thing at the same time. This man had not been blindsided. He had been watching. And everything he had seen, he had kept, quietly, methodically, without ever letting them know he was keeping it. Anger is predictable. Anger gives you something to manage. Quiet accuracy gives you nothing. But the real shock, the one that left the entire 27th floor breathless, hadn't happened yet. When Imani dropped to her knees and Kaylin reached for his phone a second time, what came next didn't just expose a betrayal. It revealed a plan. Imani dropped to her knees. Not slowly. The way a person drops when their legs make a unilateral decision. Sudden, floor level. One heel twisting sideways, her bag sliding across the charcoal carpet. Kaylin. His name cracked in her voice like a fault line. I am begging you. I made a terrible mistake, but we can come back from this. We can fix everything if you just... I'd like you to hear something first, he said. He opened an audio file and held up the phone. Her own voice filled the hallway. Clear, unhurried, completely unguarded. After the divorce, I'll claim the pregnancy as Kaylin's. He won't contest it. He never contests anything. With $100 million in assets, the settlement alone will cover everything. The hallway went absolutely silent. Not the polite quiet of people being discreet. The genuine, arrested silence of people who have heard something that reorganized their understanding of events. A woman near the elevator pressed her hand over her mouth. Someone dropped a pen. Nobody moved to pick it up. Jabari Cross went very still. Imani, on her knees, did not look up. Kaylin lowered the phone. You are 3 months pregnant, he said, with his child. And the plan was to present that pregnancy as yours and mine in the divorce proceedings, to secure a significantly larger settlement. He paused. I've known for 6 weeks. What the recording described goes beyond an affair. It is what attorneys in high-asset divorce cases call predatory opportunism, a deliberate scheme to misrepresent facts in a legal proceeding in order to redirect assets. It is not a crime of passion. It is a plan, built in advance, by someone who viewed their partner not as a person, but as a resource. And here's the part that is hardest to sit with. It could only work on a specific kind of person. A trusting person. Someone who, in Imani's own words, never contests anything. The scheme was designed for Kaylin specifically, built around his known character. His loyalty was not incidental to the plan. It was the mechanism the plan depended on. Jabari had been quiet since Kaylin returned from the car. But now, with the hallway frozen and the recording still hanging in the air, he straightened up and found his boardroom voice. Kaylin, clearly this situation has escalated in ways that... I also want to mention, Kaylin said, as if Jabari had not spoken, that I participated in the Vertex Dynamics ESOP equity program 3 years ago. The shift in the room was immediate. Several people who had been watching with vague sympathy suddenly paid a different kind of attention. The program Kaylin named was internal, not publicly discussed. Knowing its name and structure required either direct participation or very close attention to Vertex Dynamics' internal financials. Kaylin had been a participant. He reached into the envelope and placed a final document on top of the stack. A summary from Meridian Capital Partners in Newark, bearing a transfer date from the previous Tuesday. Those shares matured 4 months ago. I liquidated them last week. He looked briefly at Jabari. You administered that program. You know what the mature evaluation looked like. Jabari's expression did something complicated, because Kalen had just demonstrated, in 2 sentences, that he had been paying far closer attention to the infrastructure of Jabari's own professional domain than anyone had assumed. The second thing landed harder than the first. One more recording, Kalen said. He opened a second file, ambient kitchen sound in the background. Imani's voice, relaxed and certain. Kalen works better when there's distance. He doesn't ask questions, he just puts in more effort. Then Jabari's voice, lower. 6 more months. Once the equity picture is clearer, we'll know how to structure the exit terms. The hallway absorbed this slowly, because this transformed the story one final time. This was no longer about an affair that had been discovered. This was the exposure of a coordinated timeline, a deliberate strategy to manage Kalen's behavior, delay the marriage's dissolution until the most financially advantageous moment, and execute a separation designed to extract maximum value. Psychologists call this pattern coercive financial control, using emotional manipulation to manage a partner's behavior in service of an undisclosed financial agenda. The damage is specific and serious. It retroactively reframes every positive memory. Every warm moment becomes a question mark. The person is left unable to trust their own recollection of what they believed they had. Someone in the back of the hallway said quietly, "Lord have mercy." It was the only sound for several seconds. Jabari opened his mouth, looked at Kalen, and whatever he found in that steady, unafraid gaze, he closed it again. Kalen glanced at his watch. Plain, practical. The same one he'd worn to work every day for 6 years. "You have 47 seconds before security arrives," he said. I called from the lobby on the way up. The hallway went completely still. Imani looked up from the floor. The performance had left her face entirely. The composure, the calculation, the careful management of impression she had maintained for years. What remained looked very young, genuinely frightened, and perhaps, for the first time in a long time, honest. She reached toward him, not grasping, just reaching. The way people reach when they've stopped pretending they don't need something. Kalen looked at her hand, then at her face, and he said, quietly, without cruelty, without the performance of righteous anger that the moment might have invited, "You didn't destroy this marriage, Imani. You only proved it stopped existing a very long time ago." Nobody moved. The phones that had been raised throughout the hallway came down, one by one, the way they do when a room arrives somewhere that doesn't fit inside a screen. This was not a dramatic scene anymore. It was something quieter and more final. A man choosing, in public and without apology, to value his own dignity more than the relationship that had disregarded it. Security arrived in 44 seconds. Jabari adjusted his jacket with both hands, the smallest and saddest gesture of the afternoon. Imani sat on the floor of that hallway in a designer dress, mascara on her cheeks, one heel turned sideways. Watching the man she had spent years underestimating walk to the elevator without a backward glance. The doors opened. He stepped inside. The doors closed. The hallway stayed exactly where it was, full of people who had gone very quiet, and a stack of documents arranged neatly against the wall, and a Hermes bag beside the baseboard with a wedding ring folded inside it. What followed in the weeks after that Tuesday was swift, thorough, and entirely predictable to anyone who had seen what Kalen had prepared. And what he chose to build next, after the settlement, after the silence, after the last door closed, is the part of this story I most want you to hear. The divorce was finalized in 45 days. In New York, that qualifies as remarkably swift. Kalen's attorney, a methodical, quietly effective woman named Diane Cho, who operated from a modest office on Court Street in Brooklyn and had been working his case for 3 of those 11 months, later told a colleague that she had never seen a settlement proceeding so thoroughly prepared on one side. That was because Kalen had prepared everything, every record, every document, every piece of financial evidence organized into a sequence so complete that the opposing attorney, after reviewing the first 40 pages of discovery materials, reportedly set the folder down on his desk and said, "There's nothing to work with here." There wasn't. The lottery winnings, received before any divorce filing, and documented through the Lottery Commission as individual assets prior to the marriage's legal dissolution, remained entirely Kalen's. The equity payout from the ESOP program, similarly finalized weeks before the proceedings began, also remained his. The financial strategy that Imani and Jabari had discussed on that recording, designed to claim a portion of those assets through a settlement timed to coincide with their maturation, had required everything to happen in a specific order. Kalen had simply changed the order, months before they were ready to move. There is a lesson here that I think is worth naming directly, because it's one that gets lost in the emotional weight of stories like this.
Kalen did not win because he was wealthier or better connected or more powerful.
He won because he paid attention earlier, prepared more thoroughly, and acted from a position of documented clarity rather than reactive emotion. He turned patience, the very quality his wife and her associate had mistaken for passivity, into a strategic advantage. Behavioral economists call this delayed response strategy. The decision to absorb information quietly, allow the other party to believe they are in control, and act only when your position is fully secured. It is the approach of someone who understands that timing is not about being fast. It is about being ready. Kalen was ready. They were not. Imani's position at Vertex Dynamics was terminated within 2 weeks of the incident, officially documented as a mutual separation following a conflict of interest review, which is the corporate language for a situation that everyone understands and no one will discuss specifically. Jabari Cross was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation into conduct violations that the recordings had made difficult to dispute. By the time that leave concluded, his role had been restructured into something he did not accept. His resignation was received without notable comment. His reputation in the industry, which had been built carefully over nearly 2 decades, did not recover. Kalen did not follow any of this closely. He had blocked both numbers the evening the divorce was finalized, and he had made a deliberate decision not to monitor consequences he had not chosen to create. The consequences were the natural result of documented behavior. They were not his project. He was focused on something else. He had found a house in Montclair, New Jersey, a quiet, maple-lined suburb about 40 minutes from Manhattan. 4 bedrooms, a backyard large enough for a garden, a detached garage, and a front porch with a screen door that made a soft sound when the wind came through. He bought it outright and moved in on a Thursday with 3 suitcases, a box of kitchen equipment, and no furniture in the living room yet, because he had not decided what he wanted there. For the first time in years, no one was deciding things for him. That first weekend, he planted a vegetable garden. He had grown up watching his grandmother tend a garden along the back fence of her house in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. A woman who had worked 2 jobs, raised 4 children, and still found time on Saturday mornings to be on her knees in the soil, pressing seeds in by hand. She used to say that growing things was a practice in trust. You do the work today, and you believe, without proof, that something will come of it in its own time. Kaylin hadn't grown anything in years. The Manhattan apartment had no outdoor space, and Imani had found the idea of gardening charmingly impractical. He now had 12 tomato plants, 2 rows of pole beans, and a small raised bed of herbs he suspected he had planted at the wrong depth, but was willing to learn from. He also retrieved a 1972 Buick Riviera from a storage facility in Secaucus. Rusted along the lower panels, engine reluctant, interior needing everything. He began working on it in the garage on weekend evenings. Not quickly, not with a deadline. With the steady, patient attention of a man who had been reminded recently that things worth having are built slowly. 6 weeks after moving in, he drove back to the BP station on Lexington Avenue one last time. Omari was behind the counter with a crossword puzzle open on the glass surface beside the register, filled in with the careful handwriting of a man who does not rush leisure. He looked up when Kaylin walked in, and his face settled into a slow, unhurried smile. "There he is," Omari said. "I moved to Jersey," Kaylin said. Omari raised his eyebrows.
Voluntarily? Montclair. It's good. Omari studied him for a moment. The particular, unrushed study of an old man who has learned to read people by what they've stopped carrying rather than by what they still are. "You look different," he said. "I sleep now," Kaylin said. "That'll do it every time." They stood in comfortable quiet for a moment, the kind that doesn't require filling. Then Omari said, without preamble, "Big money shows you who's performing and who's real. Looks like you've seen it clearly now." "I have," Kaylin said. "And what do you see when you look at yourself?" Kaylin was quiet for a beat. He looked at the lottery display, the scratch-offs, the Powerball board, the small laminated sign that said, "You never know," in cheerful red letters. A man who spent 8 years trying to be enough for someone who never defined what enough meant, he said, and who is now, for the first time, just trying to be enough for himself. Omari nodded once, slowly, the way a person nods when they hear something that needed saying. "That," the old man said, "is the whole lesson right there." Before leaving the city for good that afternoon, Kaylin sent one final message to Imani. "I'm not angry with you. I'm only sorry that for 8 years you chose to take rather than build. I hope you learned something from that eventually." He did not wait for a response. He blocked the number before a read receipt could come through. He had written it for himself, not as a final word in an argument, but as the sound of a door closing gently, firmly, without leaving a gap. And that gentleness, in the end, was the most clarifying thing he had done all day. 2 years later, Kaylin Voss was living a life that looked nothing like the one he had been building for someone else, and everything like the one he had quietly always wanted. And the last part of this story is the part that will stay with you the longest. 2 years later, late September in Montclair. The maple trees along his street had begun to turn, just the first tentative gold at the leaf edges, the color you only catch if you've made a habit of paying attention. Kaylin was on the back porch with his coffee, watching the garden. The tomatoes had done well this year, far better than the first season, when he'd overwatered and lost half the yield. Gardening had taught him the same lesson his engineering work always tried to. Failure is not a setback. It is information. The only question is whether you use it. He had used it. The firm ground foundation had been his idea,
incorporated 14 months after the move. A small office on Bloomfield Avenue in Montclair, rented for less than his old Manhattan parking spot had cost.
Its focus was specific. Men who had experienced financially and emotionally damaging relationship betrayals, trying to rebuild not just their material stability, but their sense of themselves. The foundation offered financial counseling, legal referrals, and structured peer conversations, a space where men conditioned to endure silently could speak plainly about what they had survived. The waiting list, by the end of the first year, was longer than Kaylin had anticipated. What the foundation was built around, and what mental health professionals document but mainstream culture rarely discusses, is this. Being in a relationship where a partner uses emotional closeness as a mechanism for control and financial extraction is a recognized pattern with measurable consequences. It leaves marks on a person's ability to trust their own judgment, on their relationship with their own generosity. The path back from that damage is real. It is just rarely walked alone. Firm ground existed because Kaylin knew that from experience. He did not put his name on the building. The sign simply read, "Firm ground." He met her at a farmer's market. Not dramatically. She dropped a jar of local honey on the sidewalk outside the Montclair Farmer's Market on a cool Saturday morning in October. It shattered. Kaylin, standing nearby, choosing between two varieties of heirloom apple, crouched down and helped her clean it up. Her name was Soren, 31, a high school biology teacher who spent her Sundays hiking the trails at South Mountain Reservation in Millburn and her evenings cooking from second-hand cookbooks she found at estate sales. She was warm, direct, and quietly funny. She made no effort to be impressive. She was simply what she was, consistently, without requiring anyone to notice. The first time Kaylin showed her the backyard, she looked at the tomato plants with genuine respect. "What do you do with all of them?" she asked. "Neighbors get most of it. I make sauce with the rest." "From scratch?" "It's not complicated." She looked at him. "You're very different from what I expected." "You had expectations?" "My colleague's brother went through your foundation last year. She told me about it." A small smile. "I didn't realize the founder made his own tomato sauce." He laughed, the real kind, the one he'd been gradually relearning. They did not rush. Neither had any interest in rushing. They walked trails together, cooked dinners, her recipes, his kitchen, a natural division of labor that required no negotiation. Sat on the porch in the evenings and talked about small things, and sometimes didn't talk at all, and found the silence moved the same direction from both sides. For Kaylin, this was new. Not the silence. He had always been comfortable with quiet. But silence that did not require him to compensate for it, to fill it, to work harder to make it acceptable. He had spent 8 years exhausting himself inside a relationship that was never going to be comfortable. This was simply easy, in the way things are easy when they actually fit. Omari called on a Tuesday afternoon in November, still at the BP station. A little more silver, a little slower. Same sharp eyes. "Son," he said through the screen, studying Kaylin with the unhurried attention of someone confirming a long-held theory. "Now you understand. A solid foundation isn't built with money. It's built with patience, self-knowledge, and knowing your own value before anyone else gets to define it for you." Kaylin was at his kitchen window, looking out at the garden, dormant for winter, covered and composted, storing itself quietly for spring. "Money can arrive without warning," he said, "but character only reveals itself under pressure. That's what the money did. It didn't create the situation. It just applied enough pressure that the truth became impossible to hide."
He paused. Watch what people do with the ordinary Tuesday, with the person who is reliable and present and never makes a scene. That's where character lives. Not in grand gestures, but in what someone does when nothing is at stake. Omari pointed at him through the screen. Write that down somewhere. I lived it, Kalen said. I don't need to write it down. Final voiceover. Kalen Voss woke up after a 22-hour shift, bought a $2 lottery ticket out of kindness for an old man, won $100 million, and spent his very first thought on making someone else happy. He was not rewarded for that impulse the way he hoped, but he was rewarded for everything that impulse revealed about who he was. The patience, the preparation, the discipline to walk away without performing his pain for an audience. This story teaches us that generosity is a virtue, but it requires discernment. The same open hand that gives warmth to someone who values it becomes a vulnerability in the hands of someone who doesn't. Knowing the difference is not cynicism. It is wisdom. It teaches us that the people who take their time, who build carefully, observe honestly, and refuse to trade their self-respect for the comfort of pretending, are the ones still standing when the truth comes out. And it teaches us that closure is not something another person gives you. It is something you choose. Kalen found that out on a Tuesday afternoon in a Manhattan hallway. And he found his peace on a back porch in New Jersey, watching tomatoes grow, beside someone who loved the same quiet things he did. The way the best things usually arrive, without announcement, on an ordinary day, when you finally stopped looking for something shiny and started looking for something real. And you, if tomorrow you found yourself holding something unexpected, something that changed everything, would you spend your first thought on someone else? Or would you finally, for once, spend it on yourself? If this story moved something in you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. These scripts are born from genuine human creativity and a desire to confront social truths. AI acted as a co-pilot, helping organize thoughts so that powerful messages of fairness, forgiveness, and human potential could touch hearts worldwide. Production team. Story and screenplay by Quinn Fung. Character development and visual conceptualization by Chris Nguyen. Video scripting and scene adaptation by David Nguyen. A passionate team dedicated to bringing this story to life.